and I'm joined in the studio by a man I absolutely adore. He's a very dear friend of mine, Connor Tomlinson. Connor, you knew Charlie. You knew Charlie Kirk.
I was fortunate enough to have met Charlie very recently in May, and he set some time aside to meet a friend and I when he was over, just before he did his Oxford and Cambridge debate. And we were asking him for notes on how to replicate the successful Trump revolution from the other side of the Atlantic over here. And he was gracious enough to sacrifice an hour or two in his schedule to sit down and have a laugh and a joke with us. And I can tell you what he really cared about our country. He was horrified by the Southport massacre, by the grooming gang story, by the migration crisis, and he knew it in a hell of a lot of detail. I was asked to provide him some briefing notes, especially on the Lucy Conley case, ahead of his interview on another station, but then his debates at Oxford and Cambridge, and that really put it on the radar of the American State Department. And so the US government would not be as informed of the plight of us here in Britain, with people being locked up for social media posts while sex offenders roam free, if it weren't for Charlie Kirk. And when I met him, I sat across from him because we were going to hopefully work on some media stuff in future. When he was planning to come back over and do a UK university campus tour, so that would have been fun. But I joked at the time and I said, well, it's always fun to sit opposite a future US president. And I think he was a shoo-in. I think, frankly, the guy is like MAGA's JFK now.
He was a beautiful man. He was a good soul. He was a Christian. He was a young father. He dedicated his life to trying to fight for goodness. That's my belief. I don't think that actually is just a belief. I think that's probably the truth. And when I heard the news yesterday, I was absolutely shocked and taken aback. But at the same time, I wasn't surprised. And that is harrowing. You have a very significant social media profile. You've been a huge part of very successful platforms like Lotus Eaters. You're a writer now for Courage Media. There are a lot of people out there who know you, and you are in many respects like our own Charlie Kirk. This must worry you so much.
I got a call from my dad, who's not... he's a pretty hard guy, you know. He's always a working class plumber, so he's not one for emotion. And he just said, he said to me, I shouldn't be saying this to my own son, that I'm worried it could be you. I'm friends with a bunch of guys that come on this station that are, you know, young guys, up and coming. Remember, Charlie started at 18. He built the most successful political vehicle off his own back from 18 to 31, and he was a shoo-in for president. Yeah. And there are lots of similar guys in politics at the moment, much smarter, much better than I am. And we all said, you know, it could be any one of us. And it's not like we've got security. Like Charlie at least had security at his event. It wasn't up on the rooftops, because you never think that someone's going to shoot you for having a conversation with college campus kids, but you never know if someone's going to rush the stage or something. Like here, if someone can get as close to Nigel Farage to throw a milkshake in his face, you know, what happens when it's not a milkshake next time? Yeah. This is the great concern. And the other factor in this as well, so there's two. First of all, this is a direct consequence of the borderline genocidal rhetoric that's been coming out of American media for 10 years. If you call your opponents fascists, Nazis, if Joe Biden gets in front of a podium in Philadelphia with a blood-red backdrop and shouts, MAGA Republicans are an existential threat to this country, the signal you're sending out to your most deranged, out-of-touch members of your base is, oh my God, the reincarnation of Adolf Hitler is going to come along, and you will be a hero if you take him out. That's why they took a shot at Trump. That's why they shot Steve Scalise at a congressional baseball game. That's why they've now shot Charlie Kirk. And that's why people were celebrating this. They were celebrating it on TikTok. They were celebrating on Blue Sky. There was someone at the event that whooped and cheered.
Let's actually look at one prominent channel in America, one of the main news channels in America, and one of their commentators and his reaction to Charlie's death.
Yeah, and again, I emphasize what you just emphasized. We don't know any of the full details of this. That we don't know if this was a supporter shooting their gun off in celebration, or so we have no idea about this. But following up what was just said, he's been one of the most divisive, especially divisive younger figures in this, who is constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech or sort of aimed at certain groups. And I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful actions. And I think that's the environment we're in, that people just, you can't stop with these sort of awful thoughts you have and then saying these awful words and not expect awful actions to take place.
Disgusting. Well, I'm pleased to say Matthew Dowd, who was commenting there for MSNBC, has been fired by the channel, rightfully so. Connor, how does somebody who is a Christian, espousing Christianity, how is this now framed by these people as hateful, and that is being done on a major news channel. Not an eye is batted. This just seems to be a normal point of view now.
Yeah, MSNBC and CNN have basically become like the Radio Rwanda of the Democrat Party, and some people on this network are genuinely quite dangerous. They have become deluded to think that Trump is the second incarnation of Adolf Hitler. When I was in the States, the time before last, around the summer, I stepped out of a Starbucks on Capitol Hill, and there were two protesters there, and they were filming, and they just started shrieking, "Here come the white nationalists, here come the neo-Confederates, here come the Christian nationalists," and I was like, what on earth? And they were surprised to hear an English accent, and they were protesting outside of a church. I don't know what the church was, I don't know what denomination it was, and I just said to them, do you normally just scream at random people like this? And they were like, well, you were dressed for it. And the passerby said, welcome to America, democracy is a full contact sport. So this is what has been done to people. They've been deranged to the extent where they would just scream at and possibly assault random people on the street, and mentally delusional people who digest a diet of hatred on cable news all the time, spewed by the likes of MSNBC. It's only a matter of time till one of them takes a shot. They already took a shot at Trump. A second assassination attempt tried to happen right before the last election. Joy Reid was on MSNBC saying, we've got to get Hitler out the White House. Of course someone's going to take them up on that offer. Charlie Kirk was like third in line to the MAGA throne after J.D. Vance. It's why South Park has been relentlessly mocking him ever since they've come back. He is the face of the youth MAGA movement. Or was, and it's no wonder they went after him, because he was so successful and so beloved. And yeah,
those words, democracy is a full contact sport.
Yeah.
Just wow. But it's not just in America, is it? Because the scenes you are describing, these sort of rabid, unhinged leftists who scream as if we're about to face cataclysm. We're seeing these scenes in the United Kingdom. We're seeing the Socialist Workers' Party bellowing, Nazi scum off our streets, stamp on the neck of fascism. We've seen police escorting these protesters right into the heart of ordinary citizens, mums who are worried about the safety of their children. But the radical difference, I think, between the United States and the United Kingdom right now is, whereas Donald Trump yesterday called out this very provocative, demonic rhetoric of the left wing and how they characterise and frame their political opponents, our Prime Minister is prone to using that rhetoric. How scared are you that Britain is very dangerously backsliding into democracy becoming a full contact sport?
Well, this is why the accusations of two-tier justice have been bandied about ever since they were obvious in the way that the Southport protests were policed, when rioters from Pakistani Muslim communities were told, put your weapons in the mosque and there'll be no trouble, whereas Keir Starmer was standing on a podium pretty much every night saying that everyone protesting who weren't even involved in violence about the atrocious murder of those 3 young girls and the stabbing of the adults and other children in Southport were far-right racists who were threatening minorities with bricks and firebombs. Also, when we talk about these sort of leftist communist organisations that get carte blanche, Socialist Workers' Party, Ricky Jones, the Labour councillor who called to cut the throats of people he called Nazis and got off scot-free, Hope Not Hate, who seemed to slander everyone as a far-right racist every few moments. That I suppose it's no coincidence that Lord Hermer himself used to work on the Searchlight magazine that Hope Not Hate came from. We know where our own government's allegiances lie. They give the left carte blanche, whereas they crack down on sensible parents and mums wearing pink t-shirts and call them the far right.
Donald Trump characterised this as the radical left in the United Kingdom, in the United States, when we know, like you said, people like Lord Hermer, people like Lucy Powell, people like Sir Keir Starmer. It's not just John McDonnell of old who's now doing fringe events at the TUC conference. It is our own Prime Minister labelling people as far right. He might not have used the term Nazi or fascist. The direction of travel is the same. It is identical, creating this spectre of a mythical far-right threat to the United Kingdom that frankly doesn't exist. Does someone need to tell Donald Trump ahead of the state visit that actually with our Prime Minister, he's dealing with the sort of radical left wing that he has just accused of being behind the provocation that led to Charlie's death?
J.D. Vance is very aware of this, as are the US State Department. President Trump has a lot of briefs sliding across his desk, but I'm sure someone will bring this to his attention eventually. If I may say one last thing, Charlie Kirk, all he ever did was have conversations with people.
Yeah.
And what his detractors, what the people celebrating his death today don't understand is that Charlie Kirk was the moderate option. You're not going to get any more Charlie Kirks from now on. There are tons of young men who have watched this video and realised there are lots of people with whom we share a country who don't want to have their minds changed, who hate us, who want to see us dead, who want to see a good family man taken away from his 2 young kids. And so now the Trump administration has to tackle that problem of radical left violence by Antifa, by Black Lives Matter, by the Globalize the Intifada folks in their country. There need to be prosecutions, there need to be prescribing of groups that have pushed and peddled this nonsense, and people need to go to prison for inciting violence against law-abiding, good-natured men like Charlie Kirk.
Is there also a risk as well that there will be people in America and indeed in the United Kingdom who will look at what happened to Charlie Kirk, people on the right wing, who realise that this is intolerable, but actually say, look, because there's been lots of posts on social media from people on the right saying, this is it, I'm ready to fight a civil war, and that chills me.
I would encourage nobody to take actions into their own hands, and in order to prevent that, the Trump administration needs to act, because the only thing that pushes people to unwise vigilante action is if the government refuses to exercise their right to use force to prevent this kind of extrajudicial assassination. So the only thing that will stop things spiraling out of control into tit-for-tat political violence is if the Trump administration gets a handle on this and puts the people responsible for making this climate of violence and intimidation in prison.